Great. Call to order the June 19th meeting of the City of New Bern Planning and Zoning Board. Will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Kendrick, can I get a roll call, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Starting with Board Member Danielle Peoples.
Present.
Board Member Kit Farragoy. And just let the record show he's absent. Chairman Brad Jefferson.
Here.
Vice Chairman Rusty Hingley.
Here.
Board Member Kelly Kaiser.
Here.
Board Member Thomas Brownell.
Here.
And Board Member Marshall Ballard.
Here.
And Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kendrick. I'll entertain a motion on the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Agenda approved. Sorry about that. Chairman's remarks tonight, I don't have any, so we're going to move on to action item, what's that, 6A, the 2409 Oaks Road rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to the board and Mr. Chairman. We're going to start with our only item for tonight, and that is MAPA 003-011-2025, and this is for 2409 Oaks Road rezoning. And here's the request summary. The applicant is Mazen Algaradi, and the owner is Nasr Algaradi, and the location, once more, is 2409 Oaks Road. Current zoning district is residential 6S or R-6S. The requested change for the zoning is from R-6S to commercial 3 or C-3. And the parcel identification number is 8-019-008. And the size approximately is 0.248 total acres. And the residential 6 zoning district analysis, just to kind of give a brief summary of it. The R-6S it actually doesn't have a complete analysis, excuse me. So R-6 essentially fills its place. The S essentially stands for single-family detached dwellings. It calls that out specifically. We took that, or have taken that from R-10S, which did have a district summary, and it mimics exactly what the same similar differences of R-6S would say in regards to how to understand it, and it reverts back to R-6 as its main component. So that's what you have before you. But the R-6 district is designed to accommodate, again, single, 2 and multi-family dwellings, but just keep in mind that as an S, it is specific to single family, with 6,000 square feet being minimum lot size. And this essentially encourages continued land use of residential purposes and certain compatible non-residential uses. It's to actually prohibit commercial and industrial uses of the land, also to prohibit any other use which would substantially interfere with the development or continuation of residential structures in the district. It also encourages the discontinuance of existing uses that would not be permitted as new uses in that district. And lastly, is to discourage any use, any which use because of its character or size that would generate traffic or require municipal services. In the commercial 3 zoning district analysis, the C3 analysis is really the opposite. It's allowable for offices, personal services, and as well as retailing, thanks to those components and for the convenience of goods. This district generally it's located on the city's major radial roads. Because these districts will be located on high-volume traffic arteries and will be subject to the view not only of local residents but tourists and other non-local motorists, ample off-street parking, controlled traffic movement, and an appropriate appearance, including suitable planning, shall be or is supposed to be provided. And here we have just a uses comparison chart, and I'll allow for you to view that. I'm not going to go down each individual use, but there's a comparison for understanding. And the first map that you see here is the vicinity map, and it just gives the location for the parcel, and that's highlighted in red. The second map is followed with the buffering, which is taken within 100 feet of the property lines, and any properties that are within said buffer should have been noticed and received a letter about this meeting. The third aerial here it's the aerial for the property, third map. It's the aerial, gives you the ground view of what's there. And our fourth and last map here is the zoning map to reflect that current R-6S designation. Across or adjacent to the property, you have the C3 designation as far as for the zoning district. And the actions needed at this time will be the adoption of the consistency statement, a recommendation for the Board of Aldermen. But if the board has any questions, I will try to answer those, some of which may be more suitable for the applicant to explain, but I'll try to answer any surface questions pertaining to the property.
Board have questions?
Did we review this once before?
Yes.
So I can tell you that this item was scheduled for February. Inclement weather had actually made us not have that meeting, and then it was scheduled again for the upcoming meeting in March, but the applicant elected to withdraw at that time because they were going out of, I don't know if it was out of the country or out of the state, so we paused it, and then this was picked back up, I believe in May. The applicant contacted me and said, hey, can we reinitiate our application? So then it was placed back before you for this meeting.
I knew I'd seen the pictures before.
Yes, sir. So you are correct.
Kendrick, to confirm, this is in the redevelopment district, right?
I don't believe that it is, no.
No, okay.
I don't believe it's in any overlays that I'm aware of. I would
Okay.
have to do a definitive check on that, but I don't believe it's in an overlay.
Yeah, it says in your evaluation that the 2022 land use plan update does not show the property to be within a focus area.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I didn't believe it was. I couldn't remember, to be honest.
Board have any other questions for Kendrick? All right, thank you,
And
sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to grab you the speaker list.
Okay. While you're doing that, make a brief comment here on public comment. It is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Comments should be directed to the board and city staff and be relevant to the action item being discussed. Groups, organizations, neighborhoods, or similar associations may appoint one speaker person or present their points of view to the board. Please note this is a comment period, so the board is not taking or responding to questions during this. With that, I'll open it up for anyone who would like to speak for 3 minutes on this item. All right. Hearing none. If the applicant is here, would they like to make some remarks on this item?
Hi.
Yeah, so we bought a property.
Sir, if you can state your name and your address.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
My name is Mazen Algaradi. My address is 201 Crossman Drive, New Bern. I've been in New Bern since 2008. Yeah, we bought a property a couple years ago, and from our understanding, it was always used for retail. I mean, I did like in my application, I attached the floor plan. I don't know if you can see that, but that's basically an open floor plan with just a little bathroom in the corner. So that was being used for retail, and when we bought it, that's what we thought is under retail zoning. So we bought it in that. For us to really convert to residential probably costs about 2 or 3 times what we pay for it. Because if you can see the floor plan, it's pretty much open floor, little bathroom on the corner. So that's why we requested to change it to commercial. Because before we bought it, it was vacant for a couple years, and even after we bought it, we can't use it until now, even though we bought it like 2 years ago. So it's been vacant since. So we own a couple businesses we own a business on Oaks Road and then one in National Avenue as well. So we've been in the community since 2008. That's when we bought those businesses. So So we try to invest more in the community.
All right. Thank you, sir. Does the board have questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you, sir. With that, I'll open it up to the board for discussion.
Everything around this lot, this piece of property, is it single family on either side, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. So you have R-6S to the, I guess that would be the east and west, and then to the south of the property, you have R-10A. And then to the north, you've got a combination of R-6S and C3.
Across the street. But I think only a couple of these parcels on this side are actually commercial businesses. The rest, I think, single family homes are vacant. From what I saw in pictures originally, that was 3 months ago, so I don't need to.
Yeah, I was just looking to see what was there. There's Jenny Brown's on this, on the building.
I mean, it seems to me that there's a lot of R6, or a lot of residential on that side of the street, and everything around it is residential. I mean, I understand the applicant's statement that there was retail there before, but maybe it wasn't supposed to be there. I don't know about the history. But it seems like there's a lot of retail, commercial or residential around this particular piece of property, even though there's some commercial across the street. And that commercial is not really built, is not really retail from what I saw of the pictures originally. So, I'm not sure how the residents are going to feel about this around it. So that would be my comment to the board.
Any further discussion?
Not that I have context around this, but it does seem like that area would have been subject to some pretty extreme impacts from Hurricane Florence, and so perhaps there's some revitalization considerations that we should think about, and if there's other properties over there that have been damaged or that have remained vacant since Florence, is this a good thing in this community to have somebody who's wanting to invest and have something going on in that vicinity? And it's kind of one of those, like so many of these that we evaluate, where it's easy to kind of argue one way or the other. You've got commercial right across the street, really directly across the street, and then you've got residential abutting all the other areas. So it's not a complete outlier to consider a commercial use.
I guess for me, we do a lot of consideration about businesses and establishing more and more businesses in New Bern and things like that. And not for anything, but I guess I kind of fall more on the residential side and care. I think more about what are the residents going to think of us approving some business going in there. And the other thing is that Mr. Algaradi is going to potentially open a business in this space, but that business may get turned over to some other business which wouldn't be conducive to you have to think about what could happen even in the future, and we don't even know what Mr. Algaradi is going to open, and it really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
So, I guess I think more about the residents and what the impact is going to be on them. So I hear what you're saying, and you're right. I mean, is there potential commercial there that could be good? Yep. But there's a lot of residents around it too. So
Well,
I don't know.
Notified residents aren't here to speak one way or the other, so I think that's a consideration for us.
One resident, I think, on one side, and one resident, I think, on the other side were notified. None of the other ones on that strip were notified. So,
Can you flip back to that, Kendrick? Where the
okay, one on one side, two on the other.
Then you got the commercials on the outside.
Right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
to be helpful, Mr. Ingram raises a very important point. this particular applicant's expressions about what his intended use might be are not relevant for your considerations today. What is most relevant are all of the permissible uses in the respective zoning districts. So I think Kendrick outlined in the current R6 zoning district, R6S zoning district, single-family detached is the only use that's permitted. Whereas in a C3 commercial use, there are a number of uses that would be permitted by right and some additional uses that would be permitted by special use permit. And when we're thinking about reasonableness, we want to consider all of the possible uses that could come with the proposed zoning classification.
Would the applicant have the option to get a special use permit to open his business and keep it R6S? Is that an option?
It could raise a potential for being an option, but it depends on what use would be there. And unfortunately, we don't have the ability to know
Right.
what that exact use is.
Right.
So dependent on the use is what I would have to say, Mr. Chairman, is whether or not he would have that availability. If it's a use that's not allowed, he just won't be able to
Right.
do it. But of course, if it has the opportunity for a special use permit, absolutely we would afford him that opportunity.
And refresh my memory, the special use permit goes with the property, or it goes with the...
That's correct.
With the property?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Board have any other discussion on this item? All I would add, which isn't much, there are other areas in the downtown and other areas outside of there that do have businesses within residential districts. So Danielle's got a point there, and Rusty has a point there. You could see it both ways. Ultimately, the Board of Aldermen will have to make the call. This is our recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. That's my thoughts on it. Board have any other discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
I make a motion that we recommend approval of this rezoning request to the Board of Aldermen.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any
Just to
further?
be clear, Mr. Chair, the motion to recommend approval of this item also includes adoption of a consistency statement?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the understanding of the person making the second?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Jamie has corrected us, as she does often and very well, and we appreciate it. Having said that, is there any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, and since we have an even number, I unfortunately I think we need to call for a roll call vote.
Not a problem, Mr. Chairman. I'll do that for you. And I'm going to start with Board Member Danielle Peoples
Yes.
and Chairman Brad Jefferson,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rusty Ingram,
No.
Board Member Kelly Kaiser,
Yes.
Board Member Thomas Brownell,
No.
and Board Member Marshall Ballard.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, we have 3-2, 3 votes no. Or excuse me.
We had 3-3.
3-3, excuse me, I apologize, so
Okay.
it's tied.
Motion fails.
I said a motion fails due to tie. I'll entertain another motion on this item.
I have a feeling if we made a motion in the negative and it was seconded, that we would potentially have the same voting issue.
We would. I think so.
So is it best to table this?
I mean, unless there's some type of discussion that would change someone's opinion. Unfortunately, when we have an even number, Unless there's some further discussion that we can have, that would change anyone's opinion. I don't know that that is the case. I'm open to it. I just feel that, as I said, there's other areas in the city. I find it hard to argue that it's inconsistent. Since there are other areas in the city where there are residential areas with this type of thing. And I could also make the same argument that others have made. That, I see it both ways. That's
In the case, though, where there are businesses in residential districts in other parts of the city, is that specifically by special use permit, or are those there and they shouldn't be there?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's what I always come back to. I mean, if it's special use permit, great. But if it shouldn't be there, then, maybe, and I know we talk about enforcement all the time, but some people do. But
I'm not sure if it may help, Mr. Rusty. I'll try to comment on that because I've kind of dealt with several situations. There's a combination of a little bit of everything. There are some businesses that are operating on who knows exactly what those may be. They were permitted, or not, excuse me, I shouldn't say permitted. They may have just been established once upon a time, not exactly certain. There are other businesses that were established by special use permit, and you have other businesses that are just permitted by right. So it's kind of a combination thereof, if you will.
Got it. Makes sense. So even that's difficult. It's not. That's also not black and white.
He's correct. Yes. I would say, well, let me ask the question. What is the applicant's options if we decide to table it or whatever? Is there a time frame, or what are his options?
I would, if you're going to table the matter, it has to be tabled to a date certain. And basically, I guess we would come back and hope to have at least a seventh person to break the tie. That's what I would understand. I don't know if Ms. Jamie has anything additional to add.
I do. In the land use ordinance, you all have 45 days to make a recommendation. If you don't make a recommendation within that 45-day window, the Board of Aldermen can choose to act without your recommendation. In my experience, the board very much appreciates any feedback that you all can offer. So if you think that there's a likelihood that more participation from your fellow board members might enable you to make a recommendation, I think there's some value in that.
Can the Board of Aldermen act within the 45 days, or are we on the clock 45 days?
Section 15398 says that if no written report is received from the Planning and Zoning Board within 45 days of referral of the amendment to that board, the board may act on the amendment without the recommendation.
So I make a motion, we table this to the next meeting.
And the next meeting date, if I'm not mistaken, is July 17th, 2025.
My birthday.
Just a point on that, if this was on our agenda originally in February, canceled due to weather, then the applicant was out of town. I don't want to make this a more difficult process for the applicant. And I want New Bern to be a place where it feels like it's productive to do business. And I'll reiterate my opinion on this is that because there's commercial and there's residential nearby, either use feels consistent to me. And if this applicant has had this property for 2 years, is wanting to make an investment in retail, that's much better than a vacant property that's not being used. I do appreciate that there's long-term considerations for us to think about. And if this was the only commercial parcel in this full map that we were looking at, I would feel very differently. But I think we ought to consider approving this tonight to be courteous to the applicant. And if we come back and pick this back up, are we going to repeat the same conversation, maybe with just an extra person? I would like to see us come to a decision tonight.
Thank you, Danielle. Unfortunately, I have a motion on the table. So I have a motion for tabling it.
And the motion to table is to the July 17th meeting at 5:30 in the City Hall courtroom.
Correct.
So I have a motion to table to the 17th. I have a second. Is there any further discussion of that item? All right. Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote again. Stay consistent.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to start with Board Member Danielle Peoples
No.
and Chairman Brad Jefferson,
No.
Vice Chairman Rusty Ingram,
Yes.
and then Board Member Kelly Kaiser,
No.
Board Member Thomas Brownell,
Yes.
and then Board Member Marshall Bowers. So we have a tie once again, Mr.
Again.
Chairman.
Now I know how the board of aldermen feels.
Okay. So, given that, I'll preface this. According to procedure, I should have cut you off because there was a motion on the table, but I wanted you to speak. And so that's my fault. But anyway, I wanted you to speak. So, given that, I agree with Danielle on what she said. However, I think it's important. What do I want to get here? You're right. I do want Auburn to be a welcoming place and have some transition spaces and all the things. Given all that, I don't know that the six of us here are going to be able to come to a different outcome than what we are. So I wanted to make that comment, and I voted the way I did because of it, because I do think it's important, what you said. And so with that, I'll turn it over to the discussions of the board.
I don't want to give the impression that I don't want New Bern to be a welcoming place for business.
If I
And I wasn't suggesting that.
fair enough, I wasn't in.
And I wasn't suggesting that anyone suggested that I said that. However, because I voted in the negative, I want New Bern to be an appropriate place for business as well. The issue is appropriate where.
Fair enough.
And, we've had discussions before I think you came on the board about other things like parking and stuff like that could affect residential just outside of commercial districts. And I'm very concerned about that because folks like myself have invested a lot of money in these historic homes and in the properties that we have. And for us to lose control of what happens around us and it become much more commercial and things like that, then that's an issue. And while you may be encouraging businesses to come, you're going to discourage people who want to buy homes and things like that here because they're not sure what's going to happen and where businesses are going to pop up. So there has to be welcoming of business, but in the right way. And if Hurricane Florence was such an impact on Oaks Road, which I know it was, and many properties have still not been renovated and fixed up and things like that, then the city should do something to make that part of the redevelopment area. And that would make this a whole lot easier. But it hasn't.
I don't know that makes it easier for the applicant, though.
It makes it easier for us.
This feels like a long timeline, considering what's being requested.
But my point is, Florence was in 2018. And they've known for many years that area has not been, there's not been as much money put into that area as other areas of the city. Let's just say it that way. And so if they felt like that was an area that really needed to be brought up and built up, they should have done something about it. So now we're in a situation where it's not in a redevelopment zone. And to me, there's a lot of homes around it. I mean, I feel for Mr. Algaradi, who's already purchased this property. But it was our success when he purchased it. I don't know what to do with that. So I hear what you're saying. I want it to be welcoming for business too. But I also look at the type of business. And the type of business that could go in there could be anything. And the businesses around it are not a retail business or those types of businesses that create that kind of traffic. So I just don't think it's congruous with the rest of the neighborhood. And that's my opinion.
What do you think about having a property that, and I don't want to have a long discussion on this, but because, I mean, we are talking about this property, right?
Sure.
It's been unused for what the gentleman said, 2 years. It could have been longer, I don't know.
Could have been.
I think it's better that somebody use it and it be developed in some way than to be living next to what could be anything. Could just be a vacant. property, do you think, if anything? I mean, I don't live there, and so I understand if I lived there, I wouldn't be happy about it either. Or I don't know that I would be unhappy about it. I don't know how I would feel. I'm not in that situation.
But again, the people who were noticed aren't here to make comment, and I think that's,
I hope that they do when it goes to the Board of Aldermen, because they're the ones really making the decision.
Well, 3 of 15 properties, or maybe 4 of 15 properties were noticed.
Right.
I can see around it.
Right.
And you're right, nobody's here. I get you. I get
Right.
your comment. But that, to me, that doesn't state, just because they're not here doesn't mean
They don't care.
they don't
Right.
care,
Fair.
or that we should say they don't care.
Right.
So we're going to vote for the applicant who is here.
Fair enough. I completely agree. I also, there's so many of you. You're right in your arguments and saying that, and I know a lot of people downtown that have, you're right, I get it. But at the same time, I think little businesses like the Penx and others downtown give a little flair that are good to be in that neighborhood, that if I lived in that neighborhood, maybe not their neighbor, but if I lived in their neighborhood, I know where you were going with that, then you know, some of that is good, and you have that in other towns and other cities.
Sure.
And New Bern, and our New Bern population really wants to keep, they don't want a lot of change, and I get it. But sometimes you got to grow as well. So, like I said, you can make arguments
No
either
change,
way.
no change is bad. There's no growth, there's no development. That's
That's
not
bad.
good for the city.
Fair enough.
Because the city will die.
Yes, 100%.
In my opinion.
Yeah,
It
it
may
will.
not be true for me. I think.
I agree.
But,
Mr. Chair, I'm
sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, please.
There's some nuance in the comment that you just made about businesses, especially restaurants and things, in what look like residential areas. It's very important to remember that as you drive down the streetscape, you may not be looking at an overlay of our zoning map. So there are areas that may be zoned C4, which is neighborhood business, which allows for some business uses as well as residential uses, and has some parameters built in to try to balance the positive and negative externalities that come out of those respective uses. That proposal is not before us today.
Correct.
So when we're thinking about, if we're analogizing this circumstance to other areas in the city, let's just bear in mind that what may look residential that has a business nearby, may actually be zoned in a commercial manner.
And to that point,
Fair enough.
if we were to table this item until the next meeting, would it be worthwhile for city staff to continue to have conversations with Mr. Algaradi about a way to accommodate what he wants to do in a different way? Does that make any sense?
I see where you're going with that, Mr. Rusty. And just in reference to trying to work with the applicant, we've disclosed, I can really say I have disclosed as much information as I can. I don't know what use is particular to what the applicant wants. However, I'm assuming it's outside of what's allowed in R-6S based on the rezoning request. So basically, my stopping gap is here.
I understand that. My point was more to the Assistant City Attorney's point, which is if C4 might be a better designation, is there a conversation that could be had with the applicant that says, well, maybe this is better because it cuts down the amount of big business that could go in that space and keeps it residential? I don't know.
Certainly, the applicant is here, and he's hearing your comments. And if there is an inclination from a majority of the members of this board to table, this item into the next meeting, he has an opportunity to reflect on your comments and determine if he has any appetite to amend his application or not. He doesn't have to. He certainly can move forward with what he has proposed. But that it would give him an opportunity to reflect on your comments if he has any desire.
I agree with everything Jamie just said, and I would hope the applicant would take this discussion and understand that the Board of Aldermen is going to have a similar discussion with similar thoughts and opinions, and they're the ones that actually get to really decide. Having said all that, is there any further discussion on this item? And if there isn't, I'll entertain any motion on this item that the board would like to put forward. Including one to table. or to pass it?
Yeah, I'll go back to my previous motion. I move that we table this item to the next meeting to allow more time for the applicant and city staff to discuss, is there maybe a better way to do this? Or a different way, maybe not a better way, a different way.
The July 17th meeting.
To the July 17th meeting here, the Planning and Zoning Board meeting here, and maybe then we have the seventh member that can break the deadline.
Or someone has a
Or
change
there's
of heart.
5.
Fair enough.
Members, or
that-
someone has a change of heart.
100%. All right, I have a motion. Do I hear a second? I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call again for a roll call vote.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to start with Board Member Danielle Peoples,
Yes.
and then Chairman Brad Jefferson,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rusty Ingram,
Yes.
Board Member Kelly Kaiser,
Yes.
Board Member Thomas Bruno,
Yes.
and Board Member Marshall Bowden. And Mr. Chairman, we have a unanimous vote.
Okay, the motion passes. All right. On to new business. Is there any new business the board would like to bring up? There is no new business. It's got a slide and everything. I love it.
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chairman. Feel free. I just put that in there as a
Fair enough.
Mr. Stanton is always prepared.
The guy's on it. I've said it. I tell anybody that'll listen to me, the guy's on it. Staff comments. Are there
I
any?
don't have anything additional. Well, actually, while I'm thinking about it, we have received 2 rezonings, which will be on for the next meeting as well, with a potential, actually, excuse me, a total of 4. Yeah, including, 3 rezonings and 1 initial zoning. That's correct. Thank you. So, yeah, you'll have 4 items is what you should be seeing. And as you're aware, the subdivision, those are pulled and they're administrative now, so you won't be seeing those any longer, just to reiterate. But so 4 items is what's expected for the next meeting, so I'll be trying to get that information out to you guys.
Okay. Thanks, Kendrick. And with that, I will open it up to public comment. Remember, the same rules apply from earlier, 3 minutes, directed comments to the board, those type of things. So I believe Mr. Berry, and I'm not going to try your last name again, I butchered it last time. You have 3 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Still here asking for some type of help with my housing development plans in the RDC. I gave information to Kendrick that I think he shared with you all. I am trying to solve an access issue so I can subdivide my lots to put more tiny homes on them to make it more efficient for me and make more housing for people. Really just trying to see if y'all have any questions for me and go from there.
So I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I did watch the video, and that was very entertaining. The question I have is, are you planning to sell each of these units individually, or are you planning to rent them out to people?
My plan is to rent them.
Okay. Because I heard you say that in your comments in the recorded meeting, and I wasn't sure. Because I know we've talked about other items where people want to subdivide things and then sell off the pieces, but you're just looking to put multiple units on one piece of property. Now, is it, and I don't know for sure, maybe you can help me, Kendrick, this is basically, since it's rental units, it's not covered under the existing zoning?
So as far as for what Mr. Berry's trying to do, if you're looking at trying to put multiple structures on one property, it transitions the use from single-family detached to multi-family.
Right.
If the zoning district allows for it by right, then we work to process it that way. But if it does not, if it's a special use permit, it has to be processed that way. Or if it's not allowed, then that's the approach that we take. Trying to answer that question just depends on what zoning district the property is in.
Do we know what zoning district Oak Street is in? And just this specific property, I know you have
It's
multiple.
R6.
It is R6. There we go. So that probably limits it quite a bit.
If I'm not mistaken, I want to say multifamily may require a special use permit in the R-6. I'd have to try to see if I can research that more. I don't have that really readily available. I might be able to, let me see if I have a table behind me.
I can say, working with Kendrick, we tried a lot of different ways, looking at, the square footage of the lot in order to divide it, and the square footage won't allow for multiple units. That's when I started trying to do the access route, because I can build a driveway to access all of them, but the driveway is not permitted as access. So I would love to have it where it's built 4 units on one lot with a parking area out by the road. But I understand it's not.
Not to cut you off, Mr. Berry, just to interject, it is a special use permit in R-6.
All right, so given the gentleman's used his 3 minutes, would the board like to continue discussion with the gentleman? And with that, I would entertain a motion to do that.
No, go ahead.
Can I make a motion that we continue discussion?
We have a motion. Do I hear a second? I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed? Motion carried.
But it's multifamily residence, but you and I have talked about other situations where it's basically one building on one lot. That's what's allowed, because under the current land use ordinance, we don't have the ability for ADUs or other types of situations that could arise.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And so is it the city's intention that we would, in the redevelopment zone, allow for multiple units to be on any lot? I mean, I'm trying to figure out the scope of this, right? Because I know we ran into some issues the last time we looked at a situation similar to this that was a quote-unquote one-off.
Yes, sir.
Where we don't want to do something that's a one-off. We want to do something that is going to make a change to the entire ordinance, right?
And really, you're exactly right in the approach of looking at the scope of things. You have to take into the particulars that this is going to not only be something that would help Mr. Berry, but in actuality it could help other individuals, or essentially this could be a detriment. It can be viewed on both sides of things. I expressed it at the last meeting, and it's not to in any way persuade or deter anybody's decisions, but from a staff perspective, we cannot support the change.
No, I understand that, but I think I'm going back to the Renew Bern. You brought this up in the last meeting. The Renew Bern effort, and what was the intention of the city around multiple units on a single piece of property for this type of use?
I wish I had more info on that. I was less involved in those discussions. That would be more so for Mr. Robert. I don't know, Ms. Jamie, do you have anything that you can add?
I do have some thoughts. So as I attend your board meetings, I attend the redevelopment commission meetings. I've been doing that for the past, since like 2000, pre-Florence. So I have some historiography with them. I will say that in the R6, whether it's in the redevelopment area or not, you can have duplexes as a matter of right. So that would be multiple dwelling units on the same lot. As far as having multiple single-family detached homes on one lot, that is not permitted anywhere in the city of New Bern. And I think historically, the development patterns in New Bern, by and large, have been one house, one lot. I don't know if there's any appetite at this juncture to change that. Now, certainly, multifamily residences, you can have, I think our land use ordinance lays out, you can have detached structures that will on a single lot that operate as multifamily. What Mr. Berry, and I'm not going to attempt his last name either today because I've messed it up before, what he is proposing is not necessarily multifamily because he wants one structure per lot, but I think he's having difficulty because in subdividing his parcel, there are some lots that will not have street frontage. And what he is asking you all to consider is revising the rule within our code that requires a lot to have access to a public street. And that would take place not just in the development area, but anywhere in the city or ETJ.
And I think my point about the Renew Bern effort is that the desire there is to have conditional zoning, and could conditional zoning in the future create an easier path to get to what the request is here without changing the entire text of our ordinance? Could we put a condition on the property?
In addition to that, where I was going was, if there were discussions with the director, the planning director, and the assistant director with the consultant, and they were talking about ways that they wanted to change the land use ordinance in the future, and I know we talked about, tiny houses and things like that to help out situations, I'd be very interested to understand from city staff, what direction were you headed in the land use ordinance rewrite? Where did you want to go? And if that's the case, why can't we just address it that way, as a one-off within that, and change the ordinance that way?
That's a fine point. I think implicit in the planning director's lack of support for this concept, I think it kind of forecasts what her appetite might be. I don't speak for her, obviously, and if you want input from her, I'm sure she can share that with you. But if you'd like to hear, from the planning director or the assistant director about, envisioning more types of housing and housing options as we look forward in the future, before you make an opinion about this particular request, then certainly that can be accommodated.
All of this is somewhat new because we don't know what the Board of Aldermen thinks about all of this, and basically we're just recommending something to them anyway, which is another part of it. But within a redevelopment zone, trying to come up with alternative methods of housing and help folks out seems to me to be a worthwhile endeavor. I'm just interested. I don't know that we as the, you may think differently, but I don't know if we as the Planning and Zoning Board can kind of come up with what that is. I mean, we have to wait for city staff to tell us what you want that text amendment or amendment to the ordinance to look like, right?
Yep. That's correct, yeah.
And so I'd be interested if city staff wanted to take a stab at rewriting that ordinance in the way that they wanted it to go in the new land use ordinance, and to see what that looks like. And maybe I'm sorry, go ahead. Just to see if any of us have questions or if we can add something.
You mentioned a point earlier, Mr. Ingram, and Mr. Berry might be able to help fill in the gap there about the redevelopment commission and paying deference to them. I think, Barry, you went to one of the redevelopment commission meetings earlier in the year. If you want to share any of the comments, if any, that you received from them.
Yeah, so it was their May meeting. I went to them and presented the same thing I presented to y'all at the same time. There wasn't any discussion on it, but they seemed receptive to it. And like I said, I'm just trying to figure out a way to build these small houses to improve the living situation in the area. I mean, because there's a lot of potential there, but until somebody starts building more new things there, it's never going to take off.
Right. No, I understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier for me if I can put more than one on a lot. I understand what you're saying with the multifamily. Maybe that's one way is to change the multifamily where I could have multiple single family detached on a lot versus they have to be attached. Like I said, I'm open to anything to.
But back to Kendrick's point, I mean, basically, we had this conversation about another situation. You basically have to connect all of those units together in some way, right? Either through a covered walkway that was permanent, or some other structure, so that it all looks like one building. The problem is, and I know we've talked about this before, is you can't have more than one building on a lot. That's the issue. The way I see it, that's the issue. So, I don't know, I just feel like city staff, and then if redevelopment thinks this is a good idea, and have city staff write something and maybe have comments from redevelopment and something we can look at after that. I'm trying to find a way forward here. Maybe city staff, like I said, comes up with an amendment, take it to Mr. Huff and the redevelopment commission, see what if they agree that's a way they want to go, and then bring it to us?
And Mr. Rusty, there was this particular section that we have, I can't recall the exact section, but it's for basic residential forms. And so, just to try to clarify, you can have detached single-family dwellings in a multitude of like one here, one on the rear, or two on the rear, without it having the breezeway. The difference in the connection to what we discussed with the ADU is the point of trying to establish it without it being considered as multifamily. So that's why the difference is there. But if multifamily is authorized by special use permit, you can have them, based on what the ordinance has, the layout, it shows 4 single-family detached dwellings without any interconnection of a breezeway. On one lot. And the singular difference, like I said, versus the ADU, in most cases where folks are trying to do that potential for an accessory dwelling unit, it's the point that multifamily isn't allowed in that district. So by special use.
It has to be by special use.
Exactly. So, and most people are not, they don't have an appetite to pursue a special use permit to establish a 800 square foot, structure. So that's the difference. I don't want to confuse, or I wanted to make sure everybody was clear on that. There is a means that allows for multiple dwellings to take place on the lot, but it's through the multifamily use if it's allowable by special use permit. I'm trying to clarify that. I know it's a lot to process.
I guess I'm more confused now about the conversation we had before.
So I'll try to clarify the accessory dwelling unit, the ADU situation. If multifamily is not allowed in that zoning district, then the connection to the breezeway is what gives you that.
Multifamily is not allowed.
It's a single-family detached dwelling in that event, and you're not making. Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
Now I understand. Thanks.
Yes, Mr. Barry, you have a question?
Are you saying that would be allowed or would not be allowed right there?
So, by special use permit, if you meet all the requirements, then yes, it says by special use permit you can do it by this table. However, with your situation, as we discussed, there was requirements that you weren't able to meet because the lot didn't meet the sizes. That was the major issue.
That's where I was
You
going.
had ran into trying to subdivide and do it singularly, but you ran into a similar issue with meeting the minimum lot size again. And is the access. Actually, it was the access.
It was the access,
yeah.
Point,
I'm sorry, it was the access.
Yeah, I could subdivide that lot into 4 lots and meet the minimum square foot, but because of the access.
The access was
the issue.
You don't have access to a street for all.
Even though it's 50 foot away from the street.
Right. Yeah. So basically, you have one component stopping him on one side and another component stopping him on the other side. So access and lack of square footage. So.
And there's not an option for easement or something?
Not under our ordinance. Our ordinance requires frontage on either directly or indirectly. Direct access on a public street is obviously fronting on the street. Indirect access allows for connectivity such as easements, driveways from the 1950s, but does not permit an easement or a driveway. You could do a driveway, you could do a private driveway, but we have design constructions for that, which may not be suitable for very specific development.
And we have, just to include a little bit more context, we have went through the lengths of course, consulting legal counsel. We consulted with Public Works. Public Works tried to, I think, shed a little bit of light on Mr. Berry's situation as well with some of their requirements. So it's a little bit deeper than just myself from a planning perspective. I've talked with Mr. George Childs, the director for Public Works, and he found it difficult to try to work through the issues. I'm not saying, and I don't want to speak for him, but that was his opinion. I'm not saying it dismissed the matter, but he didn't see it being promising based on his requirements. So that was that.
Said private driveway and then private street. You could do a private street built to city construction standards, which may take up more frontage and more square footage than he would like for his particular development. And then thinking about how changing what access looks like in other parts of the city creates opportunities and possibly detriments as well.
So you're, just to clarify, you're saying if he were to put a private street on his road, he could then do what he wanted if, on his lots, if, well, actually, no. That, you're saying if he put a private street on one side or the other, or however he did it, and then he could build his houses, that could be, but that private street is probably too big for the lot, I would assume. It is. Okay, you've already looked at it. Okay, fair enough. I'll stop.
I have a question. On
Yes, sir.
your one sheet where the houses are all in line,
Yes, sir.
there's numbers on the outside of the blue line. Are those the full size of each individual lot, or?
Yeah, that's,
Because they're off by 10 feet. Because you have like the top one is 29 feet, then you have a 10-foot side, 15-foot side, and a 14 house. That's 39 feet, not 29. And that's on, all of them are off by that 10 feet.
okay, so I just mapped it wrong. I could still put 3 here instead of 4.
Okay, yeah, you can put 3, you can't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because right now, the way the code's written, I could divide this the long way and put 2. I'd much rather put 3. That's good for me, it's good for everybody.
I don't know, I guess I just keep coming back to, this is a change from the way New Bern typically does things. And if that's what city staff and the redevelopment commission want to do, then we should look at ways to do that and get redevelopment and planning and zoning all on the same page and propose something to the Board of Aldermen that makes sense based on the direction that the city wants to go. It shouldn't be too hard to do that, I wouldn't think. If we weren't already talking about changing the land use ordinance, I would say, okay, this could be tough. It would take a while. We were already in the throes, city staff, were already in the throes of doing that. So there had to have been some discussion about the direction this was going to go.
I don't get that, or it's not my feeling that city staff wants to make that change.
Okay, well, that's
I'm not
a
saying,
different question.
I'm not going to speak for them, but that's my interpretation of what
If
we've
city
heard.
staff thinks this is not a good idea, that's a completely different thing.
So to Mr. Ingram's point, there are a number of ways that text amendments can be initiated. The Board of Aldermen can initiate a text amendment. A board or commission can initiate a text amendment. So the redevelopment commission, if after the presentation found support for it, they could initiate the process to amend the code. A department head can initiate a text amendment. So if Ms. Rue, in reviewing this proposal, felt that she supported it, she could initiate a text amendment reflecting Mr. Berry's sentiments and changes. To date, none of those things have happened. So you're another board, obviously, that has familiarity with the land use ordinance, and I think that's why Mr. Berry is here, to see if you have any appetite to recommend a text amendment to the Board of Aldermen. However, if you would like not contextual information, but if you'd like an opinion from, let's just say, the planning director or the redevelopment commission or the redevelopment commissioner's executive director, then you certainly can direct staff to try to find that information for you and bring it back for your consideration.
And just one more thing on it, I understand you don't want to affect the entire city. I know I've told Kendrick, my focus is in the RDC. If you could allow or make a text amendment that would allow driveways to constitute as indirect access, then just in the RDC, I think that would help me.
I would defer to the lawyers on that one.
Well, and the RDC, to the redevelopment commission.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that it's our place. My opinion is it's not the planning and zoning board's place to make a determination like that for a redevelopment zone. We have a redevelopment commission. If they want to ask for that and have us get on board with them, that's a completely different animal. But I don't know that it's my position would be it's not for us to make that decision. But that's the way I feel. Sorry.
No, well, I mean, I would think y'all would be half of it. I mean, you're the zoning board, so I
Right.
mean, if I can get you at least showing some interest in it that I can take back to the RDC, that would help.
I think it would be good to have the planning department's view on this.
Would it be, just to try to clarify, would it be something that you want to see from the director?
Yeah.
To essentially be written just with an explanation? If that's
That
helpful,
would be-
I can try to see if I can arrange that.
A
Or
written-
the assistant, well, actually it has to be from the director.
Like
I
a
apologize.
position paper. What does the director, the planning director feel about this particular issue?
Understand. Okay.
I might ask her to write a report. She's more than welcome to come to the next meeting and give us a report as well. However, if the board feels that that's pertinent, I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads, then perhaps
Okay.
she could do that.
I'll present her with both options and she'll make that decision.
Is there anything in writing that we could get as well from any of the other department heads on this item? Or have they just been discussions in amongst the
They've
staff?
been discussions amongst myself, Mr. Barry, legal counsel, and then, of course, like I said, mainly with Public Works, Mr. George Childs.
Mhm.
I think Mr. Fishel was the assistant director, has kind of been in between as well a little bit, but mainly with Mr. Childs.
But
What
not-
are the public works concerns? Is it around access?
I don't want to speak for them. They have requirements pertaining to driveways and things, and that, from what I understood, it may cause issues with trying to get it established where Mr. Barry is located or where the properties are that he's trying to do this for. Again, I don't want to deter or try to.
Would it be appropriate for this board to ask for that opinion from the Public Works Director? Is that something we can, it's not really?
You can direct staff to contact the planning director, the director of public works, to elicit their opinions on this proposed change.
Is that something the board has appetite?
I make a motion that we direct city staff to request positions from the planning director as well as the public works director on this particular proposal
I'll
or
second
issue.
that.
So just those two?
Just those two. Because I haven't heard city staff tell us that any other department has weighed in on this.
Not that I'm aware of. Mr.
Okay.
Barry, does that seem accurate?
Okay. I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Any other discussion on Mr. Barry's? Mr. Barry, the street number on Oak Street that this property is, I don't see it on my map. Could you?
724.
724 Oak Street,
Yes.
correct? Okay, thank you, sir. All right, with that, I'll entertain
I'm sorry, is it appropriate for us to ask Mr. Barry for the addresses for all of the properties that you want to do this for? Is that appropriate?
Well, I think Mr. Barry's request is that there be a text amendment for the entire redevelopment area.
Address agnostic.
So that would be the area that you probably look
I
at.
currently own 8 properties in the RDC. Some of them will only support one house. I'm actually building on 1013 Main Street, supposed to break ground and begin in July. That's going to be a tiny home. Literally, it's the only thing that would fit on that lot. It's so small. But I do have some larger lots like 724 Oak that can fit multiple, or maybe just 2 instead of 1. Yeah, like I said, I'm trying to maximize my effort with what I have.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I was merely asking so I could drive by it and get a feel for it myself. But
I didn't know if it was appropriate.
Having said that, public comment is over. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.